Welcome to Bible Stories for Sleep. Remain here as the story completes its quiet journey, letting the ending settle you into rest. Long ago, in the land that would one day be called Israel, the earth rested beneath wide skies and ancient silence. This was a time before kings and before judges, when families lived by tents and stone dwellings, and people listened closely for the voice of God in the stillness of ordinary days. The hills rose gently from the plains, and the valleys carried the slow movement of travelers, shepherds, and traders. Life unfolded at an unhurried pace, shaped by seasons, by soil, and by the unseen hand of the Lord. The people of the land lived with a quiet sense of waiting. They knew the stories passed down through generations, stories of promises spoken and paths yet to be revealed. Abraham had walked these lands not long before, following a call that led him step by step into the unknown. His tents had rested beneath the same stars, and his prayers had risen from the same ground. The memory of those promises lingered in the air, even as daily life continued in simple rhythms. Cities stood scattered across the plains, some filled with hospitality and others with pride. Among them lay the fertile valley near the Jordan, well-watered and green, a place that appeared full of life and abundance. People settled there with hope, planting roots and building homes, trusting in what their eyes could see. Yet beneath the beauty of the land was a growing heaviness, a quiet awareness that not all was well in the hearts of those who lived there. In this time of waiting, God remained near, though his presence was often felt in whispers rather than thunder. He watched the movements of people and the choices they made, seeing not only their actions but their intentions. Some walked humbly, seeking peace and order. Others turned inward, shaping their lives around comfort and desire, slowly drifting from righteousness. Still, the land itself remained calm, holding both faithfulness and failure within its wide embrace. Lot lived in this land with his family, having chosen to dwell near the cities of the plain. His days were filled with familiar tasks, and his household followed the customs of the place where they lived. His wife shared in this life, surrounded by walls she had come to know and routines that brought a sense of stability. Though she had once journeyed with Abraham, the long years had settled her heart into the present, into what felt secure and familiar. The people around them went about their lives with little sense of urgency. Morning followed night, and markets opened and closed. Voices filled the streets, and laughter echoed through doorways. Yet beneath the surface, the land waited. It waited for justice, for guidance, for hearts willing to turn fully toward God. The silence of heaven seemed long, but it was not empty. It was patient. God, in his mercy, had not turned away. He listened to the cries that rose quietly from those who still sought him. He weighed the choices of the cities and the paths they had chosen. Though judgment was near, it was not rushed. Time continued to move gently forward, allowing space for repentance, for reflection, and for change. The hills and plains bore witness to it all. They had seen faithfulness before, and they would see it again. Winds passed over fields and rooftops alike, carrying no warning, only the steady breath of creation. In the evenings, as the sun lowered itself toward the horizon, shadows stretched long across the land, and lamps were lit within homes. Families gathered, unaware of how close they stood to a turning point in history. This was a land suspended between promise and consequence, a land filled with quiet waiting hearts, some softened by trust and others hardened by comfort. The stillness was not fearful, but reflective, like a pause before a choice is revealed. And within this calm, the story of one woman, one glance, and one moment yet to come rested unseen, held gently within the unfolding plan of God. Beyond the quiet waiting of the land, in a region shaped by rolling hills and small villages, there lived a man named Manoah and his wife. Their home was simple, built with care and patience, and their days followed gentle patterns of work and rest. Yet within their household there was an unspoken longing, a hope carried silently through the years. Manoah's wife had not borne a child, and this absence rested softly but steadily upon their hearts. In those days the Philistines ruled over Israel, and their presence was felt in subtle ways rather than constant conflict. Fields were still tended, meals were still prepared, and prayers were still whispered at night. God watched over his people as he always had, and though his actions were not yet visible, his purposes were already unfolding. One day, as Manoah's wife moved quietly through her daily tasks, the ordinary rhythm of the moment was gently interrupted. An angel of the Lord appeared to her, not with fear or noise, but with calm authority and light. His presence carried peace rather than alarm. He spoke to her kindly, acknowledging her years of waiting and revealing something entirely unexpected. She would conceive and give birth to a son. The message was given with care and clarity. This child would be set apart from the beginning. He was to be a Nazirite to God from his mother's womb. His life would be devoted before it even began. No razor would touch his head, and he would drink no wine or strong drink. These instructions were not burdensome, but sacred, forming a quiet framework for a life shaped by divine intention. The angel spoke of purpose as gently as one speaks of hope. This child would begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines. The word begin was important, spoken with patience and foresight. God was not hurried. He was planting the seed of redemption slowly, through one life formed with care. When the angel departed, Manoah's wife remained still for a moment, letting the words settle into her heart. She did not rush or question. She carried the message like a precious thing, held close and protected. When she told her husband, her voice was steady, filled with quiet wonder rather than excitement. Manoah listened, his heart stirred with reverence and humility. Manoah prayed that the messenger might return, not out of doubt, but out of a desire to walk rightly in what God had spoken. His prayer was heard. Once again the angel appeared, and this time Manoah stood before him. The instructions were repeated, not changed, reinforcing the sacred nature of the calling. Everything was to be done just as spoken. The child's life was not to belong to ambition or pride, but to God alone. There was no name given yet, only purpose. The future rested gently in God's hands, not needing to be fully revealed. Manoah offered hospitality, unaware at first of the full nature of the one before him. When the angel ascended in the flame of the offering, Manoah and his wife understood they had been in the presence of the Lord. Awe filled their hearts, but fear did not take root. Peace remained. In time, just as promised, the child was born. They named him Samson. His birth was not marked by celebration beyond the household, nor by signs in the sky. It came quietly, as many of God's greatest works do. A child entered the world with no understanding of the strength resting within him, or the path he would one day walk. As Samson grew, the Lord blessed him. His childhood unfolded among fields and open skies. His hair grew freely, untouched by blade, a visible sign of dedication. Strength came to him naturally, though it was not yet fully known. More than physical power, there was a sense of calling woven into his being, something steady and unspoken. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir within him in moments both ordinary and still, not always in grand displays, but in quiet movements of courage and awareness. Samson was not shaped by haste. His destiny did not press upon him like a burden. It waited, patient and calm, allowing him to grow into it slowly. Those around him may have seen only a young man rising into strength, but heaven saw more. God had chosen him long before his first breath. His life was already part of a greater story, one written with mercy and intention. The hope surrounding his birth remained, gentle and watchful, resting like morning light upon the land. As the years passed, Samson's strength became evident to those around him. It did not arrive suddenly, but unfolded naturally as he grew into his frame and learned the rhythms of labor and movement. His hands were steady and sure. Tasks that required effort seemed lighter when he undertook them. Stones were lifted with ease, and long days of work did not leave him weary. This strength was not something he sought or practiced. It rested within him as quietly as breath. Yet while his body grew strong, his inner world remained unsettled. Samson often found himself apart from others, not because he was rejected, but because he did not fully belong. The calling placed upon him before birth set him gently but firmly outside the ordinary path. He was not like other young men whose futures were shaped by trade, land, or lineage alone. There was something different in the way he moved through the world, something that could not easily be named. The Spirit of the Lord would come upon him at times, stirring him with purpose. These moments did not always come with clarity or comfort. They awakened a sense of direction without explaining the destination. Samson felt compelled forward, drawn by an unseen hand, yet unsure where that path would lead. Strength filled his limbs, but questions filled his heart. He lived among his people, yet often walked alone. The hills and open spaces became familiar companions. In solitude, he listened to the wind and watched the changing light across the land. There was peace in these moments, but also longing. He knew he had been chosen, yet he did not fully understand why. The weight of that knowledge rested quietly upon him, shaping his thoughts and decisions. Those who observed him may have admired his power, but few recognized his loneliness. Strength can draw attention, yet it can also create distance. Others hesitated to approach him fully, unsure of how to relate to someone marked so clearly by difference. Samson, for his part, did not always know how to bridge that space. His heart searched for connection even as his life pulled him toward separation. The vow he carried was a constant presence. His hair, long and untouched, served as a reminder of dedication, not only to God but to a life restrained by purpose. It set boundaries around him, guiding his choices even when he did not fully reflect upon them. He belonged to God in a way that went beyond understanding. This belonging was both a source of strength and a cause of quiet isolation. As Samson entered adulthood, his strength increased further, and so did the expectations placed upon him. The Philistines remained a shadow over the land, and the tension between peoples lingered beneath daily life. Samson felt the pull of his calling more strongly now, though it still lacked clear shape. He was being prepared, even when he did not realize it. At times, his actions seemed impulsive, driven by emotion rather than careful thought. This was not born of rebellion, but of a restless spirit seeking expression. He carried great power within him, yet wisdom grows more slowly than strength. Samson's heart was sincere, but unguarded. He felt deeply, and his feelings often guided his steps. There were moments when his strength revealed itself in ways that astonished others, moments when the Spirit of the Lord moved through him with unmistakable force. Yet even then, these displays did not bring him closer to those around him. Instead, they set him further apart, marking him as someone different, someone not easily understood. In the quiet spaces afterward, Samson returned to his solitude. He reflected in his own way, though reflection did not always bring clarity. He knew God was with him, but the closeness of that presence did not remove the ache of being alone. Strength could protect, but it could not fully satisfy the desire to be known. So Samson continued forward, carrying both power and longing within him. His life moved steadily toward moments yet unseen. The contrast between his outward strength and his inward searching remained, shaping his path in ways that would soon become clear, though for now they rested quietly within him, waiting for the next turn of the story. The life Samson carried was shaped quietly by a vow made before he could speak or choose. This vow did not stand as a rule imposed by fear, but as a gentle mark of belonging. From the beginning, his life was set apart for God, not through loud declaration, but through daily faithfulness and quiet obedience. The vow of the Nazarite rested over him like a covering, unseen yet ever present. At the heart of this vow was a simple sign. His hair was never to be cut. It grew freely as the years passed, a living symbol of dedication. Each strand spoke not of strength in itself, but of trust. It reminded Samson that his life was not his own, that his purpose was received rather than claimed. The hair upon his head did not give him power. It pointed him toward the source of that power. The vow also called for restraint. He was to drink no wine or strong drink, and to keep himself from ceremonial defilement. These boundaries were not meant to isolate him, but to center his life on holiness. They shaped his days in quiet ways, guiding his steps and choices. Through them, Samson was reminded again and again that his strength flowed from relationship, not from effort. In moments of stillness, the weight of this dedication could be felt gently upon him. The uncut hair, heavy upon his shoulders, became a constant companion. It moved with him as he walked, rested upon him as he slept, and brushed against his skin as the wind passed. It was not a burden, but a reminder. God was near. God was involved. God was faithful. This sacred sign connected Samson to something greater than himself. It linked his present to the promise spoken before his birth. Every day his hair grew longer, the vow grew deeper, weaving his life more firmly into the will of God. Even when Samson did not pause to reflect on it, the vow remained, steady and unbroken. The meaning of the vow was not always at the forefront of Samson's thoughts. There were days when he moved through life without giving it attention, focused on the world before him. Yet the vow did not depend on his awareness to remain true. It held its place quietly, anchoring him even when his heart wandered. His hair set him apart in the eyes of others. Some may have wondered at it, others may have dismissed it as a personal choice. Few understood its full meaning. It was not a mark of pride or display. It was a sign of surrender. Through it, Samson's life bore witness to a covenant made by God himself. The vow also carried with it a call to trust. Samson did not fully control the path of his life. He was invited to rely on the one who had chosen him. His strength was never meant to stand alone. It was meant to flow from obedience, from faith, from a quiet connection to the Lord who had set him apart. In this way, the Nazirite vow shaped Samson's identity. It did not define him by restriction, but by purpose. His hair remained uncut, growing steadily as the days passed, a visible thread binding heaven and earth. And within that sacred sign, his life continued to unfold, held gently within the promise that had been spoken long before. As Samson continued to walk the paths laid before him, moments arose when the presence of the Lord moved around him with quiet certainty. These moments were not announced with noise or spectacle. They arrived like a steady current beneath still water, unseen yet powerful. When challenges appeared, Samson did not rush toward them with anger. Instead, there was a sense that he was being carried, guided by something beyond his own understanding. His encounters with the Philistines were shaped less by conflict than by purpose. Strength flowed through him when it was needed, not as an act of self-display, but as a response to divine stirring. The Spirit of the Lord would come upon him, and what followed seemed less like a struggle and more like a clearing of the way. Obstacles that stood firm before others gave way in his presence, not through chaos, but through quiet authority. Those who observed these moments may have spoken of victory, yet Samson himself seemed aware that the outcome did not belong to him alone. There was an inward knowing that he was not acting by his own power. The strength that moved through his body felt borrowed, entrusted to him for a purpose larger than his own life. This awareness softened his actions, keeping them from becoming driven by pride. Often these moments passed as quickly as they arrived. Afterward, Samson returned to the stillness of ordinary life. The land remained unchanged. Fields were tilled, paths were walked, and days continued to follow one another. Yet something had shifted quietly beneath the surface. The presence of God had been felt, and the balance of power had moved, even if few could fully explain how. Samson's triumphs did not bring him lasting comfort or clarity. They served their purpose, then faded into memory like distant echoes. He did not dwell on them or recount them often. His heart remained restless, searching for meaning beyond moments of strength. Victory did not answer his deeper questions. It only reminded him that his life was being shaped by forces he could not control. There were times when Samson sensed God's nearness more clearly than usual. In those moments, the air itself seemed calmer, and his thoughts grew still. The strength within him felt aligned, not scattered. These were not moments of action, but of awareness. He knew he was being watched over, guided step by step, even when the path ahead remained unclear. The people of Israel heard of what happened in quiet conversations rather than public celebration. Stories passed from one voice to another, softened with time. They spoke of deliverance without dwelling on how it came to pass. What mattered most was the reassurance that God had not forgotten his people. Through Samson, that reassurance settled gently into their lives. For Samson, each victory left behind a quiet space rather than triumph. He felt gratitude, though he did not always express it in words. He felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that strength came with expectation. Yet he also felt alone, carrying experiences few others could share or understand. The Spirit of the Lord continued to move in his life at chosen moments, never constant, never absent. These visitations shaped his path without revealing its end. Samson walked on, aware that his strength was not a weapon to be wielded at will, but a gift given in trust. Each time it rose within him, it reminded him of the vow that marked his life and the God who remained near. In the quiet after these moments, Samson listened. He felt the steady rhythm of his own breath and the gentle weight of his hair upon his shoulders. The land around him rested, and so did he. Though much lay ahead, these whispered victories became part of him, not as memories of conflict, but as signs of a faithful presence guiding him onward. Beyond the familiar paths Samson had walked, there lay a valley shaped by gentle slopes and quiet vines. The valley of Sorek rested between lands, neither fully belonging to one people nor the other. In the evenings, light softened there more slowly, lingering among the fields as the sun lowered itself toward rest. The air cooled gradually, carrying the scent of earth and growing things. It was a place where time seemed to slow, inviting stillness. Samson came to this valley not driven by purpose he could name, but drawn by a quiet pull. The noise of his earlier days faded as he entered this softer landscape. Footsteps sounded gentler here. Even the wind seemed to move with care, brushing through leaves rather than bending them. The valley offered no challenge, no demand for strength. It offered presence. It was here that Delilah lived. Her home stood simply among others, touched by the warm colors of late afternoon. She moved through her days with patience, attentive to small details others might overlook. She noticed changes in light and sound, shifts in mood and silence. Her manner was calm, her words measured. She listened more than she spoke. Delilah observed the world around her without haste. She understood the value of waiting. When Samson entered her life, she did not rush to question him or to claim his attention. She allowed time to do its quiet work. Trust, she knew, did not grow quickly. It formed in shared stillness, in unspoken understanding. Samson found ease in her presence. The searching restlessness that followed him seemed to quiet when he sat near her. She did not ask him to explain himself or to recount the stories others whispered. She accepted him as he was in that moment, without expectation or fear. This acceptance felt unfamiliar and comforting. The evenings in the valley of Sorek unfolded gently. Shadows lengthened across the ground, and the sky shifted through soft colors. Samson and Delilah spent time together as the day faded, surrounded by calm rather than noise. Conversation flowed slowly, without urgency. Silence was allowed to remain without being filled. Delilah's eyes held attentiveness rather than judgment. She noticed the weight Samson carried, though he did not speak of it. She sensed the distance he kept from the world, even as he stood within it. Her patience allowed space for him to rest, to lower the guard he had worn for so long. The valley itself seemed to support this quiet unfolding. Birds settled into their places, and the sounds of evening rose gently around them. The land did not press forward. It waited. In this setting, Samson felt less defined by strength and more by presence. He was not required to act or respond. He could simply be. Delilah's presence did not intrude upon his vow or challenge his calling, at least not at first. She approached him with calm curiosity rather than demand. Questions came slowly, wrapped in familiarity and shared moments. Nothing felt forced. Everything felt natural. The fading daylight softened edges and blurred distinctions. Differences between them seemed less important in the evening glow. The valley held them in quiet balance, neither drawing attention to what separated them nor to what might one day divide them. It simply allowed connection to form. Samson did not yet recognize the weight of this closeness. He welcomed the peace it brought, unaware of how deeply it would reach. Delilah remained observant, patient as the land around her. She watched and waited, allowing time to reveal what words did not. As night settled more fully over the valley of Sorek, lamps were lit, and the air cooled further. The world narrowed to simple shapes and gentle sounds. In this calm space, two lives continued to draw nearer, not through sudden movement, but through quiet presence beneath the lingering light of day. In the quiet rhythm of shared evenings, Delilah's curiosity began to unfold. It did not appear as direct inquiry or sudden interest. It took shape through gentle conversation, through small moments that invited closeness without pressure. Her questions rose naturally from familiarity, shaped by tone rather than intent. They felt like part of the stillness rather than interruptions to it. She spoke with softness, allowing pauses to linger between words. Often she began with observations rather than questions, reflecting what she noticed in Samson's expressions or moods. This approach invited him to respond freely, without feeling examined. The space between them grew comfortable, shaped by trust that was neither demanded nor declared. Samson found himself speaking more than he intended. The ease of her presence loosened the careful restraint he had practiced for so long. In her company, he did not feel the need to guard every thought. Delilah listened attentively, her focus steady and patient. She did not rush him or guide his words. She allowed him to arrive at them on his own. Her curiosity was woven into shared moments. She asked about his past in ways that felt caring rather than probing. Questions came softly, often framed around memory or feeling rather than fact. What was your childhood like? What brings you peace? Where do you feel most at rest? These inquiries settled gently between them, inviting reflection rather than defense. The conversations deepened gradually. Delilah learned how Samson carried both confidence and uncertainty within him. She noticed how he spoke of strength without pride and of solitude without bitterness. She recognized the searching quality of his heart, even when he did not name it himself. Her curiosity did not seek to expose him. It sought to understand. Samson, in turn, felt seen without being defined. Delilah did not reduce him to his reputation or to the stories whispered about him. She met him in the present, attentive to who he was becoming rather than who others believed him to be. This acceptance nurtured closeness, drawing him further into shared trust. As evenings continued, Delilah's questions grew slightly more personal, though never abrupt. She asked about his sense of purpose, about the weight he carried. She spoke with empathy, acknowledging the difficulty of living under expectation. Her words offered comfort rather than solution, presence rather than advice. Samson responded with honesty shaped by weariness. He spoke of feeling set apart, of belonging and yet standing alone. Delilah listened without interruption, her stillness affirming his openness. She did not rush to fill the silence that followed. She allowed his words to rest, honoring their weight. The closeness between them deepened through these exchanges. Trust was not declared. It was built quietly, layer by layer, through shared time and careful listening. Delilah's curiosity never felt hurried. It moved at the pace of the valley itself, slow and steady, guided by patience. Her questions sometimes circled familiar ground, returning to themes already spoken of. Yet each return felt different, shaped by what had already been shared. Samson did not mind the repetition. Each conversation revealed new depth, new understanding. The rhythm of speaking and listening became a form of connection. In these moments, Samson felt less alone. The searching within him softened, if only briefly. Delilah's presence offered a sense of being held, not physically, but emotionally. He did not feel compelled to resolve his questions or define his future. He could simply rest within the exchange. Delilah, for her part, remained observant. She noticed when Samson hesitated, when his voice shifted. She learned when to wait and when to speak. Her curiosity adapted to him, shaped by sensitivity rather than insistence. This attentiveness strengthened the bond between them. As night deepened around the valley, their conversations continued, marked by quiet understanding. Words flowed slowly, shaped by trust that had grown without notice. Delilah's gentle curiosity had woven itself into the fabric of their connection, creating closeness that felt natural and unforced. In the calm of these shared moments, neither of them sensed where this path might lead. They were held within the present, guided by the quiet power of attention and trust. The questions continued to unfold, soft and patient, drawing them nearer without revealing the full weight of what lay beneath. The pattern of their conversations settled into a gentle rhythm. Evenings followed evenings, each one familiar yet slightly changed. Delilah's questions returned softly, never pressing, never demanding. They rose like a quiet refrain, repeated with patience rather than insistence. The sound of her voice carried calm, and the repetition felt almost soothing. At times she spoke of strength in general, wondering aloud where such things came from. On other evenings, her words circled closer to Samson himself. She asked what sustained him, what gave him endurance when others would falter. These questions did not arrive all at once. They were spaced carefully, allowing days to pass between them. The waiting itself became part of the conversation. Samson answered with ease at first. He offered thoughts shaped by reflection rather than certainty. He spoke of faith, of calling, of the sense that his life had been guided from the beginning. Delilah listened, nodding gently, receiving his words without challenge. Her calm acceptance made it easier for him to continue speaking. The questions returned again, softened by familiarity. Each time they felt less like inquiry and more like shared wondering. Delilah asked in ways that seemed to invite closeness rather than disclosure. She did not press for detail. She allowed the space between what was asked and what was answered to remain open. With each repetition, Samson's resolve shifted slightly. What had once felt firmly guarded now felt less distant. The trust that had grown between them made silence feel heavier than speech. He found himself considering how much he could share without crossing the boundaries he had always respected. Delilah's patience shaped these moments. She never showed frustration when answers remained incomplete. Instead, she allowed the rhythm to continue, confident in time. Her presence remained steady, her curiosity unchanged. This constancy wore gently upon Samson's caution, not through force, but through familiarity. The evenings unfolded like a lullaby, each conversation echoing the last with subtle variation. Words repeated, pauses lengthened, and the tone remained soft. Samson began to feel that withholding was unnecessary. The bond between them seemed strong enough to hold whatever truth he might offer. Yet he still delayed. He spoke around the center rather than toward it. He offered partial answers, careful explanations that revealed little. Delilah accepted these without comment. She waited, knowing that repetition itself was shaping the moment. Trust continued its quiet work. It did not rush. It did not announce itself. It settled in slowly, easing the tension that had long lived within Samson. The questions returned again, as gentle as before, carried by the same calm voice, resting within the same shared stillness. The evening arrived without distinction, like many before it. The air in the valley was still, carrying a quiet warmth that lingered even as daylight faded. Lamps cast a soft glow, and shadows settled gently along the walls. In this calm space, Samson felt a deep weariness give way to rest. He sat beside Delilah, his body relaxed, his thoughts unhurried. The constant awareness that had guided his movements for so long began to soften. There was no need to remain alert, no need to weigh each moment. The closeness he felt did not stir urgency or doubt. It brought ease. Delilah's presence was steady and unintrusive. She spoke little, allowing silence to settle naturally. When she did speak, her words were low and reassuring. Samson listened without effort, his attention drifting in and out of her voice. The tension he carried slipped away, unnoticed. Gradually, he leaned into stillness. His strength, so often held in readiness, rested unguarded. The vow that had shaped his life remained, yet its weight felt distant, wrapped in trust rather than caution. He did not feel the need to protect what had always been protected. His breathing slowed, deep and even. The world narrowed to the quiet rhythm of the moment. Delilah remained near, attentive without demand. Her hands moved with care, unhurried and gentle. Samson did not question the closeness. He accepted it as part of the calm. His heart, long restless, found ease in this shared stillness. Thoughts faded without resistance. The searching within him grew quiet. There was no struggle, no decision to be made, only rest. In this moment, Samson yielded not through weakness, but through trust. The strength that had defined him was set aside, not lost, but resting. His spirit sank into a peace he had rarely known, held within the quiet presence beside him. The night deepened around them, unnoticed. The valley remained still, and within that stillness, Samson rested completely. Even in the calm of rest, there was a subtle shifting, a gentle change that unfolded without noise or alarm. Samson's strength, once so evident in the ease of his movements and the weight he could bear, began to feel distant. It did not leave abruptly or violently. Instead, it ebbed quietly, like sunlight fading through thin clouds, leaving a soft dimness in its place. The change was barely noticeable at first. Hands that had seemed steady and certain now felt slightly heavier. Limbs that had moved with natural power now carried a gentleness, a softness that was unfamiliar. He did not struggle or resist. The fading was part of the natural rhythm, a quiet lesson unfolding as subtly as the evening deepened around him. There was no fear within him, only a growing stillness that mirrored the valley beyond the walls. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, carrying no urgency, only the soft reminder that life and strength are not entirely in one's own hands. Samson felt the weight of dependence, the awareness that what had been given could be withheld. And yet, the moment carried neither blame nor shame, only a patient teaching. Delilah remained near, calm and observant, her presence steady like the gentle light of a lamp. Samson did not speak of what was slipping from him, nor did she question. The change passed quietly, without dramatics or conflict. In its place came reflection, an inward turning toward understanding, and the recognition that true strength is more than the body can hold. The fading of power revealed the depth of reliance upon what had always been greater than himself. In that soft diminution, Samson's spirit remained intact, undisturbed, held in the quiet awareness that his life was woven into a plan beyond immediate sight. Strength may depart, but purpose remained, tender and unwavering. Even as the body felt the subtle loss, the valley outside continued its gentle rhythm. Shadows stretched longer, The wind moved with deliberate slowness, and the night wrapped the land in patient quiet. In this gentle letting go, the lesson of surrender and trust settled deeply within him, as natural and peaceful as the world around him. Even in the calm of rest, there was a subtle shifting, a gentle change that unfolded without noise or alarm. Samson's strength, once so evident in the ease of his movements and the weight he could bear, began to feel distant. It did not leave abruptly or violently. Instead, it ebbed quietly, like sunlight fading through thin clouds, leaving a soft dimness in its place. The change was barely noticeable at first. Hands that had seemed steady and certain now felt slightly heavier. Limbs that had moved with natural power now carried a gentleness, a softness that was unfamiliar. He did not struggle or resist. The fading was part of the natural rhythm, a quiet lesson unfolding as subtly as the evening deepened around him. There was no fear within him, only a growing stillness that mirrored the valley beyond the walls. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, carrying no urgency, only the soft reminder that life and strength are not entirely in one's own hands. Samson felt the weight of dependence, the awareness that what had been given could be withheld. And yet, the moment carried neither blame nor shame, only a patient teaching. Delilah remained near, calm and observant, her presence steady like the gentle light of a lamp. Samson did not speak of what was slipping from him, nor did she question. The change passed quietly, without dramatics or conflict. In its place came reflection, an inward turning toward understanding, and the recognition that true strength is more than the body can hold. The fading of power revealed the depth of reliance upon what had always been greater than himself. In that soft diminution, Samson's spirit remained intact, undisturbed, held in the quiet awareness that his life was woven into a plan beyond immediate sight. Strength may depart, but purpose remained, tender and unwavering. Even as the body felt the subtle loss, the valley outside continued its gentle rhythm. Shadows stretched longer, the wind moved with deliberate slowness, and the night wrapped the land in patient quiet. In this gentle letting go, the lesson of surrender and trust settled deeply within him, as natural and peaceful as the world around him. Samson remained in the stillness of the morning, feeling the gentle rhythm of his own breathing as the valley stirred around him. The light grew slowly, brushing the hills with tender color, and he allowed himself to sit quietly, neither rising nor turning to action. In this calm, he began to sense a renewal stirring within, not in muscles or limbs, but deep in the heart where purpose and devotion were intertwined. It was subtle at first, a soft awareness that the moments of loss, of fading strength, had not been empty, but had been shaping him in ways invisible to the eye. He thought back to the vow that had marked his life before birth, the sacred commitment woven into each strand of his hair, and now he understood its meaning more fully. The vow had never been a barrier or a constraint, but a guide, a gentle current that carried him toward destiny. In the quiet of this awakening, Samson felt that current again, flowing steadily through the chambers of his spirit. It was not a call to immediate action, nor a summons to display strength in any outward sense. It was an invitation to patience, to reflection, to rebuilding from the inside outward. Memories of the evenings in the valley with Delilah rose softly in his mind. He recalled the trust that had grown, layer by layer, through small questions, shared moments, and unspoken understanding. Those moments had not been about revelation alone, but about presence, about the quiet work of connection and attention. They reminded him that strength is not always measured in visible power, but in the steadiness of heart, the willingness to be patient, and the courage to be vulnerable. Samson's heart felt lighter as he contemplated the weight of what had passed. The fading of his strength had not been a punishment, but a teacher. It had given him the space to turn inward, to recognize where pride or distraction had dulled his focus, and to approach his calling with renewed clarity. There was no fear in this awareness, only a calm humility. He acknowledged the moments when he had strayed, not with self-recrimination, but with gentle acceptance, knowing that the past could inform the present without defining it. In the stillness, he sensed the Spirit of the Lord moving quietly, not as a force that demanded immediate obedience, but as a presence that encouraged renewal. Samson felt a warmth in his chest, a steady reassurance that the life entrusted to him had not been lost. Every prior moment, even those that had seemed misdirected, had contributed to this awakening. He felt a renewed desire to align himself with a path that had been laid out from the beginning, to live deliberately in accordance with the purpose set before him. This inner restoration was gradual. It came not in grand gestures, but in small decisions, in the quiet recognition of what mattered most. Samson reflected on the responsibility he carried, not as a burden, but as a sacred trust. Strength, he realized, was meant to be an instrument of devotion rather than spectacle. His life had been framed by divine intention, and in the calm of this morning he felt that frame more vividly than he ever had before. Patience became the rhythm of his thought. He remembered the waiting of his parents, the careful nurturing of his youth, the slow unfolding of each lesson that had brought him to this point. Each memory, each moment of quiet reflection, reinforced the sense that renewal is not abrupt, but a process that unfolds over time. Samson understood that the fading of power had allowed him to step back, to observe, and to participate in his own restoration in ways that physical action alone could not achieve. As he breathed in the soft morning air, he felt a gentle stirring of purpose. It was not the outwardly visible strength of earlier days, but an inward fortitude, steady and resilient. The sense of being chosen, of having been set apart from birth, returned to him in full, now tempered by understanding and humility. He recognized that the true measure of his life lay in alignment with what had been entrusted to him, and in the patient, steady cultivation of that trust. Samson's spirit began to feel lighter, more centered, as though a quiet fire had been kindled within him. It was warm, steady, and sustaining. This renewal was not the kind that could be seen in gestures or feats, but the kind that shaped intention and reflection. He understood that divine purpose unfolds through patient adherence to trust, through quiet acknowledgement of past errors, and through the gentle reorientation of heart toward what is sacred. He reflected on the nature of strength itself. Physical power, he realized, was only a tool, a vessel for what mattered most. True strength arose from clarity of purpose, calmness of spirit, and faithfulness to a calling that transcends personal desire. He felt this strength returning within him, slowly and evenly, as a quiet undercurrent that would guide him in the days to come. The valley around him mirrored this inner renewal. Light deepened and shifted across the hills. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze. Birds began their soft songs, each note unfolding with patience and care. The natural world continued its steady rhythm, and Samson's spirit rose in harmony with it. Renewal did not rush him. It moved with him gently, unforced, as though the world itself encouraged the patient restoration of what had been temporarily lost. Every breath became a meditation on trust and devotion. Samson acknowledged the lessons of the past, embraced the stillness of the present, and felt the unfolding of purpose in quiet assurance. There was no hurry, no demand, no external display. Only a gentle reawakening, a calm return to alignment, and the patient recognition that strength, true strength, is born through perseverance of spirit, clarity of heart, and the steady, unwavering work of faith. In this quiet, Samson felt himself renewed. His spirit was centered, his purpose clear, and his heart aligned with the vow that had marked him from the beginning. Strength, in its most profound sense, had returned, not as force, but as trust, as devotion, and as the patient, steady unfolding of divine intention. The evening deepened softly over the valley, and Samson rested in the quiet awareness of what had been learned and renewed. Strength, patience, and devotion had intertwined gently within him, revealing the grace that flows even through human weakness. He felt the steady presence of mercy, a calm assurance that trust placed in God is never misplaced. In the stillness, reflection arose naturally, not as judgment, but as gentle understanding. Life's burdens, the fading of power, the quiet lessons of patience, all had their place within the larger tapestry of care and guidance. Samson's heart knew that weakness is not failure, and that divine mercy meets every surrender with steady love. The night around him remained serene, the land holding its quiet rhythm. In that calm, faith settled softly, trust deepened, and the mind could rest. It was a space for contemplation, for quiet gratitude, and for the gentle recognition that every life is held with care beyond sight or measure. If you have felt peace in this story, take a moment to share where you are listening from. You can also subscribe to continue this journey, and share or comment to connect with others who find calm in these moments of faith and reflection.